What's up, Samarth? How are you? How are you doing?
I am good. Thank you so much, Rakshit, for having me. It's always a pleasure to speak
Uh,
to you both physically, virtually, in the LinkedIn office.
no, I'm glad you can make time today. I know we've been like back and forth on like finding time and like and all the process. And finally, we found time today to discuss about content, your journey, and about say even podcasting and everything that you're doing, all the cool stuff that you're doing in life, right?
I mean, again, it's an honor to come to your podcast because Brew Your Market. I
Uh,
just love what you guys are doing, and
thank you
the
so much.
way the entire thing is stacked up is really
Mhm.
encouraging. So happy to be here and share my story.
No, means a lot because like I mean I've been following your podcast on LinkedIn and I've been looking at like a few snippets up there and everything, and I was like, okay, yeah, I didn't know you make podcasts, and then I was like, I need to talk to you about this because there are very few people that I know like who create good podcasts, and I was like, best thing to do is like talk about podcasting and everything as well, right? So
100%.
yeah, without further ado, let's just start. Like, why don't you share with the audience, like, what's your journey, who are you, and what do you even do? Like, you're working as a strategy ops person at Liminal. What does a strategy ops person even do?
Awesome. So I will just break down my journey in a more chronological fashion. So I
Mhm.
come from the city of Calcutta, where I did my schooling. I did my undergrad in computer science.
Mhm.
It was a 3 years course, and I majored in data science and data analytics. Published 7 international research papers in my undergrad.
Ooh,
Did a
okay.
couple of internships. Had a failed startup around Quora. That time Quora was very popular,
Mhm.
and did a lot of debating, established my college debate society, won a few debates here and there.
Mhm.
And that's when I realized that, hey, computer science is not my calling. I can't sit and code. I need
Mhm.
to do something beyond that. Like, coding
Mhm.
is not my thing, right?
Mhm.
And then the next case best solution was to do an MBA, obviously.
Mhm.
So I took CAT, I got through IIM Code,
Mhm.
spent 2 years at IMK in all three setups, completely online, completely offline, and
Mhm.
virtual, and I mean hybrid. Sorry,
Yeah.
and represented IMK in close to 15 to 20 national and international case competitions.
Mhm.
Worked with brands like ITC, United Nations, Axis Bank.
Mhm.
Was a part of a lot of student bodies. Great
Mhm.
experience. And post IMK, I started working in this consulting firm called Retsia Consulting,
Yeah.
and after, like, over there, I worked with a lot of private equities, VCs, startups,
Mhm.
etc. And post Retsia, currently I'm working in the strategy partnerships slash founders office side of things at Liminal, which is a Web3 startup.
Mhm.
Beyond that, I have my own podcast called Thinking Out Loud, which focuses on founders, operators, VCs, and creators.
Mhm.
I do personal branding content on the side as well, and I work with a lot of startups on ad hoc basis in terms of ed tech, community building, marketing, etc. So more
Mhm.
or less, that's what I am. That's what I've done
Mhm.
in a nutshell, if I may say so.
I mean, that's a lot. I mean, like you've been just like pointing out number one, number two, number three, and like this is like 10 different people's life all put together in one person.
I
But
mean,
yeah,
I mean that's something that I would love to hear, but I
uh,
mean, I try to be as relevant as possible, and again, do things that have impact on a larger scale of things, right? Like, not just from a monetary aspect, if I may say so.
that's 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 the best part of it, right? Like I mean, like I've known a lot of people who chase experience and like in all these things over monetary, and they are more happier than people who are just chasing money, right?
Correct.
And
Correct.
so I had this question when I saw this thing, like your title, found you work at the founder's office and you work in
Mhm.
strategy ops. Like, so I've seen a lot of these job openings also about like founder's office lead. What do people really do in the founder's office, and what is the job about, and what is the
So I
strategy?
think I also wrote a LinkedIn post on this, right? That what the hell is this job, right?
Yeah.
So essentially, understand this, that you're a mini founder, right? Like,
Okay.
you are directly working with the founder in all things important to him or her, right?
Mhm.
So you are basically his or her shadow, and you work from strategy to marketing to finance to legal to product to tech, right? Like
Mhm.
it's basically an internal consulting organization within a larger organization. And you
Mhm.
get a host of projects that you take up, you solve, and you hand it over to the department, right? That, hey,
Mhm.
this is the ready-made pie. You just have to now bake the pie, right? Like the
Mhm.
pie is this.
Yeah.
That's how it happens, right? So you get projects, you do it, you submit. You get projects, you do it, you submit. You get
Mhm.
projects, you do it, you submit.
And what, like, I mean, what got you interested, and like, how did this even happen? Like from Red Sea to Liminal in the founder's office and everything.
Sure. So I think, I have always been interested in the startup ecosystem. I also had one failed startup of my own. And the
What is it
first,
about?
yeah, so it was about the community space, right? Like I was trying to create an offline community inspired from Quora, where like-minded people could meet each other in an offline setup,
Mhm.
exchange knowledge, etc.
Mhm.
And we would be monetizing it by by partnering with a lot of ed techs, have events and make them paid events, right? Like you pay entry tickets to get into those events. That is
Mhm.
the setup that was there. I guess we were very early for the time because it was 2016, and that time community was just a buzzword that people
Yeah.
had heard.
Mhm.
Had a lot of learning experiences from that, understood how communities scale and how can you make them more relevant. And that's how I tried implementing that in the various years to come.
Mhm.
But the first internship that I'd ever done in my life was with Unacademy back in 2017. And at
Mhm.
that time, Unacademy was very young, right? Like
Yeah.
it had just started.
Mhm.
And that's when I think the whole startup bug bit me, if I may
Mhm.
say so.
Yeah.
And from then or that point in time, there has been no stopping, right? Like I've worked with almost 20 odd startups in a intern slash full-time capacity. And on a consulting basis, the number is just higher, right? And
Mhm.
I think it's just in my DNA. So I am also a core team member with a junior VC, which is the
Mhm.
largest startup commentary in the country, right? So
Yeah.
again, whatever I'm doing is in some sense intertwined with the entire ecosystem. If you look
Mhm.
at it from if you look at it from an investor lens or a startup lens or even a creator lens, right? Like
Mhm.
all of them tie up together.
So tell me about, like, so you mentioned you consult to a lot of startups, the number is
Yeah.
even higher. So how did you get into consulting, and how does one get into consulting and like become a consultant with startups and all?
So I think, it's all about the network effects, right? It's just about first step in the door, right?
Okay.
So say Brew Your Market, I know you, right? And you are like, Samarth, you're good with community. And we
Mhm.
want to build a community at Brew Your Market, right?
Yeah.
So you reach out to me saying that, hey, Samarth, can you help me with this? And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. It's fine. And I do it for you pro bono because
Mhm.
you're my friend. I know you and all
Yeah.
of that. Right?
Mhm.
Now the results that come out of it, you are extremely satisfied with it, right? Like you
Mhm.
are like, someone, this is great, like this is
Mhm.
essentially what we wanted. And then you probably recommend 2 3 of your friends that, hey, we work with this guy, he's
Mhm.
great. And then because I have a proof of work or a proof of concept, right, that see
Mhm.
this worked out, then I can start charging money for that.
Got
So
it.
ideally, it's all about having that network and
Mhm.
essentially doing a free or doing a few free pro bono odd
Mhm.
jobs, right? Just to
Mhm.
build that trust and show that, hey, I can do this. I know
Mhm.
how to do this, or this is the proof of concept. And
Mhm.
then you will be like, okay, this is great, worked out well. Now what's
Yeah.
next?
Yeah, yeah. No, that makes sense. It completely makes sense. And I like how you've even structured by saying that, like how you emphasize that do it pro bono first, and
Yeah,
don't just go out and ask for money before you have proof of concept. And then like you will get referrals, you will get to make
correct.
money after that, right?
Right.
I
But
love
I
that.
mean, if you're new in the market, right, you can't just go and say someone that, hey, I'll charge $500 for this project.
Mhm.
He'll be like, hey, who are you, bro? I mean, what is this?
Exactly.
Even though you might be from a very strong pedigree,
Uh,
you still need some proof of concept
yeah.
to show why should we hire you.
Exactly. So, I mean, you also mentioned that, like, I mean, I was reading up about you wherein you mentioned that you're passionate about edtechs and you work with a lot of edtechs. So, like, I
Yeah.
mean, what do you do with them? Like, again, is it related to communities or is there some other thing that you're doing? Mhm.
So I think with edtechs, the play is a little different, right? So step in as a mentor. So I take
Mhm.
sessions with them on LinkedIn personal branding, on how to build resumes, how to
Mhm.
prepare for interviews, consulting, how to go about applying for consulting jobs, marketing jobs, etc. Helping them build some of their programs
Mhm.
ground up, right? So over there it's more of mentor slash advisor sort of a role that's there.
Mhm.
And again, depending, like again, last week only I launched my first course
Oh
on
wow.
VC, right? Like how to get into VC, or what is it in the life of a VC, right?
Uh-huh.
It's a 4 hour long course, but it gives
Where?
you
Where's
uh,
it launched?
it's on this platform called Alt Uni. It's
Okay.
by Inside
I've heard of
IIM.
all uni.
Yeah, so it's a 4 hour long course which just gives you a basic insight onto what is it like in the life of a VC, right? Like everyone talks about VC, but hota kya hai, karte kya hai wo,
Yeah.
right? That's what the important bit is.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
again, various capacities, various ways through which I function with them.
Mhm. Again, that comes with like building cred, right? Like by building credibility
100%.
and personal branding and everything. And that's why you, right from the bat, you were like focusing on building your personal brand
Correct.
alongside, right? So talk to me about Thinking Out Loud podcast. Like, what is it? What do you guys do? And what are your goals also with respect to the podcast?
So I think this is a question that every podcaster has been always asked, that
Yeah.
why did you start? What
Mm.
was the reason behind you starting it, right?
Mm.
So honestly, for Samyak and I, Samyak being my co-host and also my colleague at work, we work in the same team. We know each other since the past 10 years, and both of us had a profound interest in content, right?
Mm.
And we procrastinated for 6 months before starting this podcast. But for us, the main agenda was to, learn, right? Now, say we hosted Pratham Mittal, who's the founder of Masters Union, on our podcast, right?
Yeah.
Now, on any other day, had I just approached Pratham saying that, hey, I need 1 hour of your time, can we speak?
Mm. Mm.
He like, bro, who are you? Like,
uh,
कौन हो आप, right? But through the podcast, right, more than everything else, right, you get to learn. Like you get
exactly.
to meet people whom you on a normal day wouldn't have thought of meeting, right? So
Mm.
podcast gives you that leverage. And to answer your question, the reason why we started it is because we wanted to learn, right?
Yeah.
Like in that 1 hour episode, you learn things that you might not have, learned from, say, reading 10 books. Because understand this, right? Say a Pratham Mittal, for that matter, has over 1,000 hours of experience in building educational products, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he can give me the most precise information in
Mm-hmm.
1 hour
Mm-hmm.
that, say, I would not have gotten anywhere else, right?
Mm-hmm.
That search is indexed into a more pointer or pointed format, right?
Mm-hmm.
So ideally, I think, from us, it was primarily from a learning aspect. Now that we have gained momentum, we have been regular with the podcast, we are also thinking that what are the tangible benefits, right? Like what can be conceived out of this from a tangible output standpoint.
Yeah.
But to, like, the reason why we started was to purely learn, like just learn and learn.
No, I completely hear you. That's exactly why even I started the podcast as well, and even Brew Your Market page. So, I mean, it was initially an Instagram page, and the reason why I started the page was because I want to learn about marketing, and whatever I'm reading about marketing, I just wanted to share it as a post, right?
Correct.
Yeah, because I enjoyed it. I knew that this would benefit someone else also. So, I was like, let's just push it out. And then we were like, hey, why don't I just talk to people and get them on my podcast, record them, and share that, share those insights. I learn, and 10 other people who watch also learn, even if it's 10, even if it's 100, whatever, those
Yeah.
people get to learn. So that is the intent. I mean, and if you enjoy that process, irrespective of, like, I mean, you'll take a lot of time to make money. So irrespective of that, you'll have that drive to go on, because it's not just the money or monetary or any other this thing with that, any other aspect that is driving you. Rather, it's the sheer want to learn, right?
100%.
Mm. So talk to me about what are your goals now? Like, I mean, what do you want to achieve out of the podcast? Like, I mean, that was your initial goal of like wanting to learn. Like, what are your priorities now, 4 months down the line?
So I think now, the things are a little different when it comes to the whole podcast, right? So we want to structure it better. We want to improve on distribution. We
Mm.
want to make it more YouTube optimized, right? We are
Mm.
planning on doing a few physical episodes as well. But
Mm.
the thing is that podcast as a product is very
Mm.
difficult to monetize.
Yeah.
Same like newsletters, right? Like it's
Yeah.
very difficult to monetize.
Yeah.
Ideally, the intangible distributional points are better from a podcast, wherein you can, say, if you are someone who has extra capital at play, And
Yeah.
if you're getting founders, right, they
Mhm.
can get you deal flow and then you can invest into them as angels. That
Mhm.
could be one way. You
Mhm.
can get a lot of freelance gigs from a podcast, right? Because when you're interacting with a panel member, he or
Yeah.
she might understand your credibility, and then you can establish some connect and be like, hey, can I help you with this, right? And that just snowballs into something. So
Mhm.
ideally now what we are focusing on is to figure out these niche areas that
Yeah.
both now we have a brand asset that is moving right
Yeah.
now. How can we milk it to come to a milking cow
Mhm.
perspective?
Mhm. No, that makes sense. And I mean, that essentially is it's a very important aspect of like any type of content, right? Like, I mean, how can you make sure that it is sustainable and not just like you're just putting out energy out there and you're not getting anything in return? That's something we're also trying to figure out. So
Yeah.
I hear you. I know what you're saying. And talk to me about what's your creative process. Like, I mean, how do you come up with content, create content? Because you even do that on LinkedIn and stuff as well, right? Like, so from researching, writing, editing and stuff, like what's your process?
So I think we have we have a very different process for the podcast, and I have a very different process for myself, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to the podcast, right, it's very process oriented. We use a tool called ClickUp, which is a
Yeah.
free tool to schedule everything, right?
Mhm.
So we reach out to the guests, the guest agrees, we send them a flow, they agree on the flow, we set up a StreamYard broadcast, we send them the broadcast, they come on the broadcast, we record the episode. Post that, every episode will have one main output that goes, which is the episode itself, both in
Mhm.
audio and video format. There
Yeah.
will be one reel that goes one day before the episode goes out. There
Mhm.
is one reel that goes one day after the episode goes out. And
Mhm.
then there is a carousel post, and then Samyak and I from our individual handles post it out. Everything in terms of edit, right? Be the podcast, be the sound, be the reels, is all
Mhm.
done by me.
Mhm.
Everything in terms of social media, that is putting it, scheduling it, putting captions, making reel covers, making podcast covers, all of that is done by Samir. So the
Got it.
responsibilities are very well distributed. On
Mhm.
Sunday, the edit and everything gets done. From Monday, everything goes live.
Mhm.
Saturday I edit, Sunday edit is done, Monday everything goes live. So that's a cycle that we follow.
Perfect, perfect. And so, I mean, like, how do you bring your, say, experience in like strategy ops and stuff in content? Like, does that help or like?
Yeah, 100%, right? So because strategy and ops is all about process.
Mhm.
You make and you build efficient and optimized processes, right?
Mhm.
So what processes you're building there, you are ultimately using that same dump over here,
Mhm.
right? Like that process knowledge gets dumped over here. And I think again, for my individual content journey, it's completely opposite
What do you
because I
do?
don't have any process.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
very ad hoc. I just keep
Uh,
reading and hearing a lot of things.
uh,
Whatever I find interesting, I put it on a chat with myself on WhatsApp, and I
mhm.
somehow try to
Oh,
tie
you
it.
do that too? I do that too. I have a
I
chat
think
with
everyone does that. I
yeah.
think it's very, very convenient that way. And
Exactly.
I just try to bring about some insight analysis or human touch through that one piece, right? Like,
Mhm.
yeah, like right now only I was reading about how someone had 9,000 likes on Bumble and how she used them to promote her application, right?
What? Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Okay.
So that becomes a LinkedIn post, right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
essentially that's how I create content.
Then talk to me about goals with respect to your content, your LinkedIn content and stuff. Like what are you trying? Like, what's your goal with respect to that? Is it clients? Is it like
I
what?
think it's everything, right? From brand deals to clients to making a distribution, right? So give you an example, there's this creator called Phase Rug in the US, right? He has 20 odd million subs on YouTube,
Mhm.
and he had done a video wherein he was analyzing products that are made by creators in the US. So
Mhm.
from your Feastables to your Beast Burgers to blah
Mhm.
blah blah, right?
Mhm.
And he was talking about this one creator, and that lady had around 15 or 20 million subs, and
Mhm.
she made a bow, right? Like a bow, you can wear it on your collar or in your head, a bow worth $10, right?
Mhm.
And she was able to sell 40 million such pieces in a year. So that's,
Whoa.
yeah, that's straight up $500 million worth revenue, almost.
Yeah. Yeah.
Purely from a product which is a bow, which she was able to achieve through a distribution play, right?
Uh-huh.
Like
Mhm.
even your biggest tech companies, product companies are not able to make that revenue in a year. And
Mm.
she made it only through a single bow,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that's distribution at play, right? So if
Mhm.
you own distribution, you can
Mhm.
probably build and sell anything, right?
Mhm.
It's that easy. And
Mhm.
it might not have to be something very fancy, or what is there in a bow. Like
Mhm.
it's just a bloody bow, right? And
Exactly.
you are able to sell 40 million of them,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? So that's insight over there.
Who are some of the best content creators that you have seen in India, like tap into their distribution and like make money out of it, like in a proper way that you admire? Because you
I think
mentioned.
I would highly say of two people.
Mhm.
Both of them are Instagram first.
Mhm.
One is Vishnu Kaushal and one is Viraj Helani. Both
Mhm.
of them are in the comedy slash lifestyle side of things.
Yeah.
So Vishnu has 1.4 million, 1.4, 2.4 million. I'm not too sure. Followers on Instagram. Uh, Through his distribution, he was able to create a clothing brand
Yeah.
called Peach by Vishnu.
Mhm.
Through the distribution, he got a lot of gigs for OTT, and through
Mhm.
the distribution, he got a lot of gigs for TV. I mean, films as well, right?
Yeah.
With Viraj, not so much on the product side of things, but he got a film with Vishnu Kaushal that came on Hotstar.
Mhm.
He's made a lot of shows, and now he's out with his own podcast as well, right? So
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
really admire how these two have built products slash monetization streams
Mhm.
on their distribution itself, right? But
Mhm.
the prime example of this is Physics Wala, right? Like he was there on YouTube, built a distribution out of it, built a business on top of it, and then was able to raise $100 million on
Mhm.
distribution itself. So
What do you think about like since you mentioned all these things, like Physikwala is about education and
yeah,
Vishnu and Viraj Gelani, they're all about comedy. So do you
yeah.
think like massy content is a way to go when you're starting and like build your huge this thing with the distribution and then like go niche? Or I mean, we're doing it completely different. We're going niche and then
Yeah.
trying. But what's your take on that? Like I'm
But I think
looking.
that is something that I completely agree to, right? And to answer your question, I think that also works because, again, most people get into content from a money mindset. So they
Mhm.
will make something which is massy because that's how they get the money,
Yeah.
right? So it's very difficult to build a monetizable niche from a niche content area, right?
Mhm.
Because you're not going to be fully monetizing it,
Yeah.
right? So it's a little difficult to be very honest. And I mean, sad to say, but most of the good creators, right, are general, like are
Mhm.
very massy in nature, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think it'll take time. It'll take time where communities will be more narrowed, more narrow focused,
Mhm.
and they will have separate niches, right? Like community for this, community for that, and
Mhm.
every community will be having these select set of influencers who will only be focusing on that niche, right? So it will be very niche driven than a mass driven thing, but that also comes with a lot of consumer psychology becoming mature, right? Like
Mhm.
right now, say for comedy you have 10 comics, right? But in the future it could be that out of these 10, two would be on dark humor,
Yeah.
two will be on lifestyle, two will be on, say, cynical comedy, right?
Mhm.
So that
Mhm.
is the stage that we would want to ideally reach to. But
Mhm.
right now it's like mass is king, if I have to say so.
Mhm. No, I completely get that because that's something that I've seen do well as well. Take Mr. Beast, for example. Like he started with the massy content and now he has like Mr. Beast gaming and like more raw, this thing with that slightly more niche compared to his massy stuff, right? So talk to me about since you mentioned podcasting and like we spoke about it at length, and you mentioned even Viraj Kahlani, now he also has a podcast. What do you think about the podcasting industry in space in India? And like, how hard is it to really grow on like in India and like get listeners or even get viewers What's your take on that? How's your experience been?
I think India is still a very video first podcast country, right? And again, it consumes more general podcasts. So you'll
Mm.
see Ranveer and Raj Shamani doing very well because it's
Yeah.
drama, it's masala, it's emotions, right?
Yeah.
Niche podcasts still don't have a lot of acceptance in the country.
Mhm.
Plus, podcast as a product is audio first, not video first. But in India, it's still video first and not audio first, right? So there is a lot of gap that is there,
Yeah. Yeah.
very honest. So, yeah, I think India is in that growth trajectory in the early stages for podcast adoption, but
Mm.
still, I feel the journey is long. Like it'll
Mm.
take time, right? Because in India, you still want to view people, see their expressions,
Mm.
and then you consume content. But podcast is meant to be consumed passively and not actively.
Yeah.
It's a pure play passive digestion game.
And so what, like I've been speaking to a lot of people about this as well, and they've been telling me that, say, once they find one or two podcasts, they just stick to it. So
Yeah.
do you think there is a lot of this thing was that competition, or like it's very hard to get into that space as well, because because again, like I mean, it's not like a YouTube channel or a YouTube video wherein like, yeah, I mindlessly consume all sorts of things, but podcast people are very mindful. They're like, oh, if I take one, I am just going to listen to that, because otherwise I have to invest a lot of time in listening to something else. So what's your perspective on that? Like what have you seen?
So I think, this again ties down to the discussion that we had, right? Which is the mass versus
Ah,
niche thing.
yeah.
Because podcast is very niche,
Mm,
right? Like it's very singular focused, correct?
mm,
So ideally, it becomes difficult, right? And again, with podcast, it's all about that stickiness, right?
yeah,
So if you're hearing someone and if you are comfortable with hearing them, you won't want to change.
yeah.
You'll be like, okay, this is fine, right? But again, that is also because podcast is still not the first or the primary medium for you to consume
Consume
content.
content.
Yeah,
Mm,
it's
yeah.
still different sources. The
Mhm.
day it comes to that second position of you consuming content, you will be seeing that you have like 2 to 3 podcasts for every type of content you want to consume.
Mhm.
Something to do with comedy, something to do with business, something to do with startups, right?
Mhm.
That time you will have a much more larger spread for podcasts. Then I'll stick to one or two,
Do you
but
see
that
that
will
happening? Do you see that coming, like, I mean, anytime soon? No?
it'll take time, because again, for the majority of the audience, right, podcast is more of a mindless consumption.
Mm,
YouTube pe gaye, we see it, oh dude, this is insane, Ranveer
mm,
set is so crazy, dude, right?
mm,
That's the thing, but
yeah.
you're not picking up things that you want to learn, right? And again,
Mm,
if you hear those podcasts, they are very generic,
yeah.
right? It's more experiential. India
Yeah.
has always been more emotional than practical, right? Like
Mm,
they are heavy on the experience side of things, right?
yeah.
So again, for that reason, it's difficult. I mean, it'll take time, is what
Yeah.
I mean.
Got it. So talk to me about like a good episode. Like, I mean, what goes into a good episode? Like, I mean, a good podcast episode according to you, because you edit your videos and everything
Yeah.
as well. Like, so what do you look for? What do you look at? How do you edit it and everything?
So I think in terms of edit, right, we don't generally cut or remove anything within the middle of the episode, right? Like that, nothing gets altered over there. It's
Mhm.
only the start and stop wherein we give some intro, some conclusion, and in the middle, if there are any pauses or any redundant things, we chop it off, right?
Mhm.
But I think podcast, and I think Ken has done it very well with their cost to company bit, is that they have identified the sweet spot in terms of size, 30 minutes done,
Yeah.
and they have done it in the mix of first person commentary
Yeah.
and conversation, right? So it's conversation, first person commentary to explain it,
Mhm.
conversation, first person commentary to explain it, right? So it's a very nice singular line that they have been able to create, right? That's fun. That's how you should do it. Ideally for us, it's that through the podcast, you need, so every podcast has a theme, every episode has a theme, so you get to learn about that theme, you get to understand some softer aspects about the panelist,
Mhm.
and third, like to the end of the podcast, we have this question wherein we asked the panelists that, hey, can you tell us some books, blogs, newsletter recommendations that that our audience can keep, right? So that gives the audience a reason to come back. That acha, if we listen to it again, we'll get more recos, right?
Exactly.
There is some takeaway that has to be there, which I can exercise in an actionable manner.
No, I completely get that, because that's something that I like how you mentioned that you need those hooks, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
towards the end also, like you have those recos in the and in the start, you have those intros. And I like the Ken idea as well, wherein you have a conversation, then you have an explainer, like a narration, and then you
Yeah.
have like another conversation bit as well to keep your viewers engaged and to give them more context, right? So, I mean, talk to me about, like, as a creator, what's been your major learning so far?
So I think the biggest learning that I have had as a creator is not to be too emotionally attached or vested with your content. That is the same for for a product also, if you're building, right? Because at times, you become so hungry, you try to find content in everything. This is not good. Like, there has to be a separation of sorts, right? So content is different, life is different, right? Till the time it stays that your mental peace is at peace.
Yeah.
The day that gets very intertwined, you're into problem, because your mind will be in that exercise mode, bro. Monetization, bro, engagement, right?
Yeah.
And again, we are a generation of instant gratification, right? And social media is just forcing that forward, right? So that consciousness has to be there, and that is the most important thing that I've learned as a creator, right? That this is good, right? You're good, you're doing good at it, but there is an equal and more important life outside that, right? Which even though might not be contributing to you in terms of likes, comments, money, but has a higher significance. So keeping things separate is what I feel is very important. So which is why I have LinkedIn, Instagram notifications disabled on my phone.
Same.
So if I want to use it, I'll open it.
Yeah. I like the thing that you mentioned about loosely attached, because there's something that so at LinkedIn, the VP of editorial has this line that he always mentions: be passionate but loosely attached to things that you do. So that is a great way to go about it, like being passionate but loosely attached to whatever you're doing, right?
100%.
So talk to me about like what are some tips that you would like to give to someone who is trying to break into this creation space now?
Again, I will be very subjective, right? I will just say that, like you mentioned of what your VP said, right?
Yeah.
Create because you like. Don't create to become popular. So I remember when I started writing on LinkedIn for the first time, it's because I loved writing. So I, till my class 12th, I couldn't even converse in English. And mind you, I was from a convent school which was ranked second in India, right? Wow. So just giving you some context, and I was barely able to converse in English, right, in a fluent manner. And that time I got introduced to Quora, and I started reading on it, right? That reading mentality slowly improved my English, which then made me want to write. Okay. And that time, the thing that I did wrong was I was writing for engagement. I was not writing for writing. And through that process, I realized that, boss, this is not correct. You are writing for the very wrong purpose, right? And again, that time also, from a personal life standpoint, I was faced with situations where I sought to writing as a coping mechanism, as to went out what I thought, right? And that just made me fall in love with the whole concept of writing. And on LinkedIn also, when I started to write, it was all for my love of writing and the ecosystem. And then there was this one post that I wrote on Ratan Tata, which probably got like 8 million impressions and 1.5 lakh likes on LinkedIn, right? Like I was under the impression this could be one of the highest like posts on LinkedIn ever.
Wow.
Yeah. But again, the reason why I wrote it, because I was very inspired by Shantanu Naidu's story, who was Ratan Tata's assistant. Right? And I felt that, the world needs to know about this. That's why I wrote it. I never wrote it with the mindset that, hey, I'm going
He
to,
likes swag,
right. But then that also helped me build some sort of a mental muscle that now when I'm writing posts, I know ye chalega ke nahi, right? So that is the more objective side of things. But again, what I truly feel is that you should write, create content for the fun of it.
Yeah.
If you're doing that consistently, then you will end up reaching somewhere and then you monetize and do whatever, right? That's secondary. But pehle reach that stage of, that optimal fulfillment, satisfaction sort of a thing, that this episode I launched or this episode I recorded and I'm like, bro, it
Yeah.
was insane. I loved it.
Exactly. Yeah. The conversation that happened, I got to learn a lot.
Correct. So it's like, this was crazy, right? So there was this one episode that I recorded. It was episode number 8 for me. I have heard that episode 10 times.
Yeah.
10 times. Just because I loved that episode, right? Like, it was so raw, it was so pure. I'm like, dude, this is an insane episode, right?
Yeah.
So I think content should be created for the passion towards it. And then, yeah, you can monetize it, you can scale it. But was that innate passion, right? Like, and I remember, when I spoke with you for the first time, you were telling me about your sports blog, right? And that helped you get your job at LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But that sports blog was more from a passion lens than, I'll get a job from this, right?
Exactly.
So keeping passion is very important.
No, totally. I get that. Like, I mean, because if you're not passionate about what you're doing, then there's no point of creating at all, because if you're chasing these vanity metrics or money or something, then it will just die down, right? Towards the end. Yeah. 1 minute. Okay. 1 minute. Sorry. Yeah. But before we end, like, I have this thing was that I usually ask this question. I'm not asking because like you ask in your podcast, but then I had made a note of this. What are your favorite books or your favorite movies that you would like to recommend?
So I am not a books person. I can't read books. Books is something that is not possible for me. I am more of a podcast newsletter guy. I listen to podcasts. Like, one is of a very close friend of mine called Indian Silicon Valley. I listen to his podcast. I have heard a couple of your episodes as well. I've heard a couple of interesting episodes of both Ranveer and Raj as well. Then The Barber Shop by Shantanu Deshpande. Then Masters of Scale. Then Joe Rogan's podcast, obviously. Andrew Huberman for body and physiological things. So these are some of the podcasts that I've heard. Cost to Company, obviously. First Principles by the Ken. More or less this. Again, it's more serious stuff than fun stuff. And newsletters. I consume a lot of newsletters, right? Like I can name a few. There's one called Snacks by Robin Hood, the Ken's newsletter. Then there's this one called First 2000, which talks about how companies scale to their first 1,000 users. Then there is this crypto newsletter called the Doodhwala.
Okay.
I mean, there are 15, 20 more, but I'm like, let's not just do a data dump over here. But and I follow a lot of good YouTube channels, right? Like for independent journalism, I follow this guy called Johnny Harris.
I love him. Yeah.
He kills it with his independent journalism.
Any video, he drops any video, I'm like, I don't care, I'm going to watch it.
100%. So follow him. And for travel, I follow these two channels. One is called Kara and Nate for international travel, and one is Ronnie and Barty for India travel, right? So a lot of content consuming forums, if I may say so, but not so much into books.
Brilliant, man. Thank you for that. Now, before we end, we usually play a game with all our creators. I forgot to bring that. Give me a minute. So the game is called a Rapid Brew, okay? Wherein I shuffle a few cards, and whatever question comes up, you answer in 12 seconds or less.
Okay.
All right. So the first question is, what's one skill you are known for?
Networking.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Next one. What's one thing that always makes you smile?
Meeting new people.
Okay,
Always.
networking, meeting new people. Okay, all
Always.
right. What's one way you've recently invested in yourself?
I think I have started saying no to things. I know it's a very
Important.
not so glamorous answer,
No,
but
no, it is very important because it like the amount of burden that it like takes out
yeah,
of your life.
yeah.
It's just relieving.
So yeah, I've started saying no to things. It's as simple as that, right? Like now it's priority. What is priority? What is important? What is not priority? What is not important?
Love that. And what advice would you like to give to your younger self?
I think I would have said that don't take life so seriously, and you could have enjoyed more. You could have traveled more
Mm,
because things do fall into place when they have to. And I think a lot of people would have come and said this, but at first I used to think that Are, sabhi ye bolte hai, what's so special about it, right? But I just feel that now it's all the more important. And that time in life and this time, like right now also in life, I had a lot of friends, like both,
mhm.
right? But I still feel that investing in those select few people, in which I am sure you should include your parents.
Yeah.
Parents should be included in that. I think will make your life much more better, right? Like it's memories that you live on, and not
Mm,
like what grades did you get or which company did you work for, right? So primarily that.
I love the thought. Thanks for sharing, man. And last one, what's your go-to random act of kindness?
So I think my go-to random act of kindness is to get a chocolate for a beggar kid, right? Because
Mhm,
everyone is like educate them, make them
mhm,
sufficient for life, right? But sometimes what they want is that momentary happiness and not a secure future.
mhm.
Secure future देने वाला तो सब है boss, but that moment, right? Like say it's that beggar kid's birthday, and they don't, and the parents don't have the money to provide for their kid's birthday, right? And again, for everyone, birthdays are very special. So just giving them a chocolate that, hey, here. I think that's my random act of kindness, if I may
I
say so.
love that. I love that. And I always love ending these podcasts on a positive note. And this is a positive note to end. But I am so happy that we could make time today and you came to the podcast and you could share your thoughts. I learned a lot as usual. This is why I come here. This is why I do this. And I'm so glad that this thing I could learn so much from you. And thank you so much, man.
The pleasure is all mine, Rakshit. It's always good to interact with you and a fellow creator as well within you, right? You get
Yeah.
to know a lot of things. And I absolutely love the rapid fire thing. It's just a way better version of Coffee with Karan's rapid fire, if I
Yeah.
may say so. But yeah,
Yeah.
super fun. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, man. All right. But yeah, see you in the next podcast. To all our viewers, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. And if you have any thoughts that you'd like to share, drop them in the comments below. Bye bye.